Picturesque. Enchanting. Ancient. Mysterious. These are words that have been used countless times to describe the intrigue of India. Whether through the bustling city streets or dusty pathways in remote villages. In the new documentary film Vale of Tears, you will experience another side of this vast nation. Generations of poverty, pain, and persecution. But also of the faith and hope that is rising among the most unreached and neglected group of people in the world today. The women of South Asia.
So this was our first time to India, and I really didn't know that much about India. I'd seen a few specials on television, and I've known of Gospel for Asia for many years.
We knew about the problems the women were facing, the suffering, the persecution. Well, let me say we thought we knew. That's when we got together with Gospel for Asia. We started uncovering all these stats and seeing all these stories of what was happening to the women in that part of the world. And however bad we thought it was, well, in reality, it was far, far worse. It was a real wake-up call. We were truly blessed to have Natalie Grant get involved with our film.
We find ourselves among a culturally different group of people who live impoverished, hard labor lives in the tribal villages of Orissa.
The thing with Natalie is that it's more than just a cause or a movement. It's a passion. She's been there. She's experienced it. She's seen it with her own eyes. And God dramatically changed her perspective on her entire life.
Almost every child born in the slums will live here their entire lives, within its narrow, tattered walls. I first learned about human trafficking by watching a television show. I was sitting in my family room watching Law and Order. I never thought that television show would change my life. But because of it, I started to research the issue online. And I think just, being a typical American and being sheltered and spoiled and having no idea how the majority of the rest of the world actually lives.
Our goal with this movie is so simple, and that is to show people the life cycle of a woman. From the time they are born, even before they're born, from the time they're born, growing up, marriage, through abandonment, widowed, through everything, that it is a constant struggle and a constant battle. But there's hope.
Through my research, I began to see the oppression of women throughout the world, especially in the region of India. And when I would begin to read stories, it was more than just statistics and facts. And those statistics were mind-numbing and overwhelming. 27 million people in the world still in slavery. It's like you can't even begin to digest that. But the more that I began to read real stories of real women and young girls who were having the most unthinkable things done to them.
It's so beyond our comprehension from what here is we understand as women's rights, or that, if they're paid a little bit less or whatever the problems here, it's nothing compared to the problems that the women face there. I've had the chance to travel around the world and see a lot of places, and I got to say India is probably the most interesting.
We truly went to the far reaches of India, a place where, most outsiders never go.
We didn't want to just go to one place and find one problem. What we wanted to do was to go from the north to the south to the east to the west, because every place has sometimes different cultural traditions and different problems that have been ingrained into the society for some of them thousands of years.
We would go on these 15 or 18-hour drives straight out on these roads. Here in the United States, we would call off-roading.
The vast different ways that people live. From the villages where they literally have nothing. They have no running water. They have none of the things that we have, to Mumbai, where there's billion-dollar homes and there's gorgeous places.
It was amazing to see the variety of cultures that exist within the overall culture. For example, there are over 2,000 different languages spoken within India. Yeah, 2,000 different languages spoken within one country.
And so when we started interviewing people, and sometimes we would have 1, 2, 3 translators just to get to English. So having a conversation where you're talking to a translator to another translator can sometimes be difficult.
When we went out places, literally everywhere we went, everybody's eyes were like glued on us.
People were looking and people were turning their head. One place there was a market, and so we said, hey, we've got to get out, we've got to get the story. And so our idea, of course, was to jump out, get a little bit of footage, and then just head out, before we made too much of a ruckus. Well, about an hour later, and 1,000 people following us at some point or another, we made it out. It was pretty interesting. We would create throngs of people, sometimes to the degree that we would get out, and within minutes, there's 100 people that start to look and start to gather around and start to follow us.
One of my favorite things about this entire adventure while filming the project was meeting people.
Okay, bro. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. See you later. See you later.
Gospel for Asia has established Bridge of Hope centers all throughout India, and I tell you, when we went to these remote villages and visited these Bridge of Hope centers, they teach the children how to read and write, do math. They teach them all these things about how to keep yourself clean, like wash your hands. Things like that we take for granted in a Western culture.
Thank you for this. With me. It's my parents.
I'd be like, hey, how's it going? And I'd start shaking their hands, and one handshake would turn into 2 handshakes, then 5, and soon I was like shaking 10 or 15 little hands at one time.
Hello.
It's very diverse. There's this huge, massive problem with poverty, and deep, deep poverty, a poverty that we don't even comprehend in America. Millions of people living in slums. I mean, tin roofs and plastic on the side and mud floors. But then you have another sect, which is people who don't even have the slums. They literally live under an overpass or a bridge, and there's hundreds of them, and they're everywhere. And the interesting thing is because the traditions of the society, they believe that they were made that way.
The way they were being treated, the way they were being overlooked, the way that they were actually being treated the trash of their society. It's what kind of led me to get on a plane and fly across the world, and I found myself in Mumbai in India. a place I had never been. And I was confronted with so many different emotions just the first time I stepped off the plane. The smells, the sounds, all of this cosmopolitan nature to this city, but people literally living in cardboard and using the bathroom on the streets right in front of me. It's something that I think to this day I'm still trying to process.
Veil of Tears tells the stories of women who are just like every other woman in the world, except that these women are brutalized, they're despised, they're persecuted culturally, simply because they're women. And this has been going on for generations.
When I began to meet the women, and I remember going into Mumbai, visiting the red light district, seeing little girls for sale on the street, some of them as young as 5 years of age. And my husband and I had the opportunity to tour a brothel, and seeing these little tiny rooms with these beds lined up, and one of them had a rope tied to the end of it, and I remember thinking, don't even ask. But I asked, and they said, there's no child care. I mean, these are working women, but there's no place to go drop off their children. So this woman has an 18-month-old daughter that she tethers to the end of the bed while she's forced to work so that she knows where she is. And these are things that my husband and I say wrecked us for life. We've never been the same since that trip.
Our main objective with this documentary was to create something that took you there.
We wanted it to be real. We wanted to capture the reality of these women that live in the most incredibly impoverished areas and circumstances you can imagine. The stories we were so fortunate to actually capture not only show the heartbreak, the pain, the difficult life of these women, but it shows their courage, their resilience, their faith.
To show that God is restoring dignity to the women who have been utterly just downtrodden, I guess would be the word.
And God is not just changing their hearts, He's changing their lives. He's changing their everyday lives.
But I think for me, the most overwhelming part of the whole trip was visiting a village and seeing women who had been restored. And seeing what true hope actually does in the life of someone, that it actually can make them new, that no matter how broken, no matter how desolate, that there is still hope. And we went into this village, and these twin little girls, 6 years of age, they prayed for me. That's something that forever changed my life, that there are these two little girls trafficked when they were 2 years of age, rescued when they were 5. Here they are asking if they could pray for me, a girl who has seemingly everything. And these two little girls thought, we're going to bless her.
Veil of Tears is a story of hope. It's about persecution and pain and the suffering of these precious women. But it's about hope. It's about faith. It's about people who have learned to put their trust not in things of the world, not circumstances, not situations, but to put their trust in the Lord Jesus Christ.
Almost every time I watch a documentary about something like this, about a really tough situation, the thing is, at the end, you feel depressed and you feel like, oh man, this is terrible. And our goal was that we want to show everything, and we want to tell the stories as they are.
There's a move of women rising up in India and all across South Asia where they're getting fired up about the gospel and spreading that good news to other women. They're reaching out where men just simply can't go.
Most importantly, we want to show, and we found, people are actually giving and bringing hope. And that's what I believe will set this documentary apart. And that's what I was so proud to be a part of.
My life is forever changed. Not only seeing the oppression of women, but seeing what hope can do. That we have the opportunity to bring hope to the rest of the world in such a way that actually restores and makes them new through the hope, the love, the forgiveness of Jesus. It really is something that I experienced in a way that I never had before. And that's why I'm still so passionate about that part of the world, because those women, their faces, their stories are forever burned in my heart.
By supporting this film, you will be reaching out to the desperate, hurting women of South Asia. 100% of net profits from this film will go directly to the field and help the missionaries, and help restore dignity to the women you see in this film, and millions of others just like them.
And I believe that it is a part of what is a movement, not a movie. And I believe that's what's going to set this apart. And I believe when people walk out of the theater, if you've never known anything about India, you will be fascinated, you will laugh, you will cry, and you will be moved.
My prayer is that when you see this film, that it will completely flip your worldview upside down. Because you will get to see God's redeeming love in action.